Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be with this august, accomplished group. And I'm so thankful, just from schmoozing this morning, I have 3 people who have volunteered to help my foundation, the Stroke Recovery Foundation, create a podcast program. We're developing a program for everything about stroke recovery and everything about stroke prevention in English, not clinician terms. So thank you very much. And I'm so thrilled to speak. And the reason I'm so thrilled to speak, more than virtually everybody here, is 21 years ago, I couldn't speak, period. I was aphasic. I was in a nursing home. And I'll tell you a bit more about it. Step back a few years from that fateful day, Ulrich, that fateful minute. I was in 575 Fifth Avenue, GE headquarters, at a training program where they asked us to get into the call center business to sell their long-distance services. And so, with a few other people, we did that. And so we were commuting to Lincoln, Nebraska. We had 14 seats. We had an apartment out there. We were working hard, probably drinking too much, commuting back and forth, a lot of stress, and the money was tight. That's entrepreneurial world, as all you know. That fateful week, I happened to be not commuting, and I was in Greenwich. And that fateful day was dark in January, a dark Connecticut January day. I had a terrible headache. So I went to the doctor, left the office early, very uncharacteristic of me. Went to the doctor, he told me I had the flu. Sent me on my way, so I went home. I knew Debbie wouldn't be home because she was teaching an exercise class for women that evening. Instead of cooking dinner, as I normally did, she married the chef. I went up to bed. About 15, 20 minutes after getting in bed, I felt something snap in my brain. And paralysis set in immediately to my right side. Scrambling, I got to the phone, 911. I'm having a stroke, but don't come. I had a brain attack. Well, they didn't come. They actually listened to me. Unbelievable. Then I had the bright idea that I should be down on the first floor. So I rolled out of bed, rolled over to the staircase, thinking I could just hold on to the banister sitting down and kind of shuffle down on my rear end. But instead I lost control and rolled down a flight of stairs. Passed out on the living room floor and woke up when Debbie got home. Our garage was underneath the house, and so the house, when it made some noise, I woke up. As soon as I heard her come into the house, yelled down to her, "Come up, I'm having a stroke." She came running up, called 911. "Oh, you're home, Mrs. Mandell." Richfield was a small town. My voice got garbled. I lost my voice, and that was it. I was in the hospital for 10 days hiccuping, and then a nursing home for 3.5 months. 4 to 5 hours of therapy, every kind of therapy, physical, occupational, speech, and therapy for the therapy. It's quite an experience. And then I had a couple of years of outpatient therapy, 4 to 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. Skip over that now. Just a little time went by. We moved to Florida. And I was at a networking meeting, a marketing networking meeting. And the microphone was coming to me, because everybody in the room was asked to speak about themselves for a minute, do a 1-minute routine, and their business. Well, as the microphone came to me, I tried to get the words out. No, I couldn't do it. I had to speak to a group. I couldn't do it. I passed the microphone on to the person on my right. That was the first networking event I had been to since the stroke, and I didn't realize, because I was speaking individually, that I couldn't speak publicly. Now that is not doable if you're in the marketing world and you're an entrepreneur and you're a guy who's used to speaking plenty, having been a management consultant and an adjunct professor. This was totally undoable. So I looked for solutions, and frankly there weren't very many because I had had lots of speech therapy. A few years later, a 17-year-old lad and his father came to my office. I was doing volunteer brain injury counseling for one of the local hospitals. And he came to my office. I had met him in the hospital, and in each case, each person that I talked to, I said, if you want some additional talking or counseling, this is my card, please contact me. Well, they did. So they walked in, they sat down, the father proceeded to talk. The son sat dejectedly and depressed on the side. I said, you know, if you could excuse us, I think I need to talk to your son privately. The father resisted being protective of the son, but the son piped up and said, Dad, please leave. So I talked to as soon as the father was out of the room, the boy just exploded. No one knows what I'm going through. The boy had had a TBI, traumatic brain injury. He had had a motorcycle accident. He took his hat off, and I saw the bandages on his head where he'd had the surgery. And he kept saying over and over again, nobody knows, nobody knows. And I was supposed to start FGCU, which is a branch of the Florida State University right near our area. He was supposed to start college the next day. So we talked for a while. He said, you know, I'm comfortable with you. I'm comfortable talking to you. And I told him a little bit about myself and that I'd had a brain injury. I said, have you ever talked to anybody who's had a brain injury? I mean, I understand you talk to psychologists, which do everything they can do, but they haven't walked the walk. And so, no, he hadn't. So we talked for some more, and one thing led to another. The father came back in, the boy clammed up. And he came back once or twice more, but then they went back to Ohio. There we were. One thing I have learned is that to engage people in today's world, one needs to schmooze. Today, schmoozing. 3 people signed up for my podcast to help me. That's schmoozing. Now, what is schmoozing? I mean, I know it's talking, obviously, but schmoozing is engaging a person on their level. On their level, not my level, on their level. And I try and find some kind of a common ground. In the case of the Christmas tree gal, I mentioned going to Christmas stroll up in Nantucket. And then we had a nice conversation, because she had never been there, but she should go. And the young lady over here, she has she has stroke in her background. And she is a very giving gal, and she was anxious to do it. And the young gal here who just spoke, I thought she would be great at helping people feel better with her mind-body approach. So that's kind of like schmoozing, rather than just talking about the weather. But one of the things I do when I talk to somebody on the phone, I try and find some commonality with them. I mean, not politics. I was going to say current events, but not politics, because you don't know what people's political views are these days, particularly. But the baseball, the World Series, something to get a conversation going, so that people engage with you. We were going to Australia, and I was trying to get tickets on the phone through American Airlines. And the doctor said, you aren't going unless you're getting business class seats. So I started, one person after another I'm talking to, and I'm getting nowhere, hanging up the phone. That's what you do when you're not getting any place with a call center. But don't ask. Saturday morning I said, this is the last time I'm trying this. If not, I'll get some service to do this. I got this gal on the phone. Somehow we got talking about stroke. But turned out her father had a stroke, unfortunately, the week before. I stopped talking about me, started talking about her father. Well, I have to tell you, an hour later, I have my tickets. That was the beauty of schmoozing with people. Schmoozing with your mouth, skip the thumbs. I would like to say that we can help. What are your stars? What are the things you want to accomplish? Each one of you. You're here. You've done this great program. But you all have things you want to do. Find your stars. So as I wind up, that 14-seat call center, when the business was sold, we had 2 call centers in the Philippines. We had one in Panama near Cologne. We had 4 of them in Ohio. And that little one we had in Lincoln is now 150 seats in a local location. A serious success. And so I can help you find your stars and have success. I've seen a few things, I've done a few things, I've built a few things, and I can help you build yours. Thank you.
I really appreciated Bob's story. I come from a family where my grandmother in the 90s, she had a stroke. I didn't even know what a stroke was, so I had to try to learn what it was, because even back then, just as a certified nursing assistant, my family looked to me. So I began to research it. Later, I was married and my mother-in-law passed away from a stroke, and I had to educate the family. By then, I was an RN. And I had actually worked with stroke victims at the VA who had not only post-traumatic stress syndrome, but had had a stroke either during or after their service in the Vietnam War. Right now, I have a brother-in-law who just recently had a stroke. And now this high-end professional is having to relearn his life. Bob's 5-star approach, I cannot wait to take it back to my brother-in-law, because this time we're going to survive the stroke instead of having to say goodbye to another family member. Thanks, Bob, for offering this solution that saved lives.
Well, I just listened to Robert Mandell. He's a great speaker. He told his intense story, and then he related it to the value of schmoozing, which was a surprise, but I loved it. He's living an important life, and he has important ideas, and I'd really highly recommend him. He's so easy to listen to and funny too.
I thought it was fantastic. Bob was really great, and that's why I wanted to say something. In spite of going through what he had gone through, and he was very expressive and very clear, coherent, and his speech was very good to listen to. Somebody like that going through something and coming back again, bouncing right back. And I thought it was really interesting just to listen to him. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, having just watched Bob for the first time, I was blown away. The man has recovered beautifully from, as a critical care nurse background, that he should go through that and be as well off as he is truly amazing. So this guy is a trooper and a real sport. And what thrilled me about him was, instead of talking about his talk first, he talks about schmoozing and how important it is. And he's schmoozing with us. And so a lot of times speakers don't do what he did, which I liked, was that he actually, acted out, and he wasn't acting. That, he gave the example of, hey, this is something worth doing. In other words, people count, people matter. And he really had us so relaxed and having such a good time, and we just bonded with him. And then when he gave the speech, we were with him through the whole speech. He really knows how to engage an audience. So I don't think you'll have a single person in your audience, if you hired him, because that would go to sleep on him, because he keeps them totally engaged the whole time. And not only that, but he's funny, and he's got a lot of good experiences, and I enjoy just listening to him. But I also learn from him. I learned from him the other end of it, the patient's end of it, and that was very, very special. I have family that have been through things like that, and I have good friends who have been through things like that, and I've been a source and a resource for them. But it's not the same as being the one. And he has definitely an expertise there that is worth mining, while he's available. And he's still strong and healthy. I think you can count on him for several more years that you could hire him.